Shalom, salama, siemi. Greetings, my Israelite brothers and sisters, as well as our Gentile brothers and sisters that understand who we are through the love of Yeshua HaMashiach. And that is the sons and daughters of the Most High Yahuwah. And he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Israel. And we are his children, the tribe of Judah, scattered into captivity in the four corners of this earth. So I wanted to kind of get that out the way. It's a big title, but I want to kind of reiterate that we are scattered to the four corners of this earth. Now, just because we're scattered to the four corners of this earth doesn't mean that we just kind of sit there and are idle. I would say the opposite. I think that we get to different places and we show our natural prowess and abilities to be successful in whatever we do, because whenever we put something to our hands, usually whatever we have come to mind, we're a success at it. If you hadn't noticed, when we are in our jobs and when we are left alone, we usually figure out the problem. And not just that we figure out the problem, but then we revitalize, reshape, we refocus, retool, and we make it to our liking, and it's more sensical, usable, durable, and efficient. And then when that happens, we also have the jealousy from our captors, because we have to understand that we have been in this predicament since 1619. So before I even get started into this video, I want to give a special shout out to Lisa Cabrera and her channel, because she gives so much facts in terms of all the presentations in regards to how much we've invented and innovated, and especially with Greenwood and what that meant to Black people at that time in the early 19th century, or 20th century, depends how you say it. So in the early 1900s. So that was a crucial moment in time, because right after we had the Civil War, we went right into Reconstruction. And Reconstruction, that actually laid way to the Jim Crow and peonage laws, the vagrancy, the loitering laws that we have still to this day on these books. So the country could still revitalize itself under the auspices of criminality instead of slavery, because that's what the 13th Amendment provided for. You can still, in order servitude to where somebody has to work for free, as long as that person's a criminal. And quote, surprise, surprise, who's always labeled a criminal when our crime rates have historically been the lowest, especially in terms of violent crime. But here's a paradox that a lot of our captors don't want to acknowledge or even speak about, was the Reconstruction era. During the Reconstruction era, Black people were on their own. And when we were on our own, we took our knowledge and our skills to be able to build up for ourselves. See, we picked ourselves up by the bootstraps and then we started sprinting. And the problem is, they know that when black folks start sprinting, not that many white folks are going to be able to catch up. Hence, that's why we get shot in our backs. Let's just be honest here. We don't get shot in the front, we get shot in the backs to slow us down. Because why? We are usually in front. So the lesson that I did was the economy and Israelites. And so I don't want to go too deep into scripture because I look at this channel as we're not getting too scripturally heavy because we also have Teo and we have Dante Fortson, we have Sister E, we have We Woke Now. There's so many different enclaves and avenues and venues of scriptural reference. But I try to look at things in terms of a practical lens that we see what we see and how do we interpret what we see in that specific um, dialogue, because this is all about dialogue. This is all about talking and to get us talking and to have us understanding what's happening and how these things have happened in this time frame. Because if you don't know what's happened to you and how to analyze what's happened to you, you will be going right back into the same predicament. Ignorance is also dangerous, and so is complacency. Complacency is a killer. So I'm planning to have this short and sweet, but I'm going to try and get through my main points. And I want to begin by saying the main point is that as of 2019, you can Google this. Most of the stuff I'll pull from Wikipedia, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt now because of how Google is providing its information. There's also different search engines like DuckDuckGo and things of that nature. But the thing is that we've gone through this enough, especially with a lot of the channels on YouTube, especially Black centric channels, that they will provide a more thorough and complete presentation, especially with Lisa Cabrera's channel on Greenwood, on world on the African American veterans, Israelite veterans, and our Israelite inventors. So the main thing I wanted to show is that we have a $3.9 trillion spending power. And just imagine what COVID-19 did to our spending power and what that's doing to the economy right now. See, for the most part, this has actually provided an economic boycott of sorts. Because if you hadn't really noticed, a lot of the stuff that was going on was a lot of looting of stores, especially during the George Floyd protests. Now, whether or not people participated, you know, it is what it is. I look at it like this: you don't want to break any laws, but I understand. I do understand. Because here's the thing: from 1619 to um, 1865, there was quadrillions of dollars looted off of us. Now, do I believe that we need to go on out there and get it ourselves? Absolutely not. Because I believe that that's going to be the job for the Most High. And I believe that we're going to get repaid that with interest soon. See, it's interesting how this quote unquote world or the system is losing all its money. No, if you look at how this thing is going, the system is actually hoarding its money, and they don't even realize they're hoarding their money because they're going to pay us. And I think they realize they're going to pay us. They just don't know what mechanism the Most High is going to use to make them throw that money, that wealth at us as we're getting on out of here. See, everything that we see and we deal with, it's already been done in that first Exodus. We're just preparing for the second Exodus. At least I am. But going back into our spending power, we have been spenders. And why? Why do we spend? Because to be quite honest, we were built to like vanity. And see, vanity can be a good thing, and vanity is definitely a bad thing. And for us, we take everything to the extreme. We want Jordans. We want Gucci. We want Louis V. We want Polo. I'm guilty of that. I like Polo. We want Mercedes, Lexuses, Maseratis. All the niceties. Because why? If I can afford it, I'm going to get it. We've been taught that, but see, we haven't been taught the value of saving money. But I honestly believe that because of our flaw, it was actually a blessing. Because if you think about it, the folks that are actually trying to save in this economy that's destined to fail, imagine how their faces are going to be when everything that they've worked for goes away. See, what we do was actually a blessing for us because we know that, listen, we will have it for a season and it will kind of go away, but it will come back. Because why? Because that's the blessing that we have. And it's also the curse that we have. But as we're spending, guess what we start to become for spenders? Trendsetters. We're trendsetters. So we'll do something within our community, and then guess what? That branches, and because we are always looked at because of who we are as Judah, that culture then becomes a commercial interest. And so, for the sake of time and sake of argument, we already know who that commercial interest, who owns it, who manages it. But I'm not going to get into it um, with this presentation. But right now, we do provide economic power, and we empower music, movies, and sports. See, we tend to look at things right now and we don't understand what we did to influence what looks like now and how that came from us in a cultural aspect. See, everything that's in a cultural aspect is linked to us, and the culture actually is an economic vehicle. See, we don't understand. Look, we created basically all the forms of music that you see today. That you see today, whether rock, hip hop, country, R&B. We usually invent it and then we actually get ran out of it. Sounds familiar. And I wanted to present that because as we're going through here, you're going to kind of see that pattern and why that pattern has been established and what we see today in that establishment. See, economic viability, especially for Israelites, is actually something that's threatening to our captors. It's a threat. Look, if you have money and you can make your money independently, then if you can work to have that same model and if that model of independence grows, then guess what? You're not relying or you're losing dependence on your captor, which means we have a problem. Look, all this stuff that I'm saying, you could do a quick Google search, and there's already probably dozens of national security memos on top of, well, black people, let's make sure that they don't do these things because this can create problems in the name of national security. Because if you don't, and if you haven't realized this already, black people are just a threat to national security because we are the actual legitimate foundation of this country. And see, they know that the time is coming is that when we get on out of here, what happens to their economy? So as I release these videos, I'm trying to release these in blocks because there's another video that kind of springboards off of this that I'm going to do. And that's going to take this a little bit further as you're starting to see in this time frame of what's going on in the midst of this crisis. But just to show you, back in the 1960s, we had black dollars circulating within our community. We were actually self sustaining and self efficient. For the good, quote unquote, the good that civil rights did, it actually did something very bad. It actually took away our economic vibrance because the companies that we used to own, like plumbing companies, hardware companies, factories, and other things that we would hold on to that was passed down from generation to generation from our forefathers that were enslaved, those trades, those skills were then permeated within our generations, that skill would still be maintained and carried on. See, it's really easy. Okay. Well, guess what? They know about plumbing. They know about electricity because they understood this. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to have licenses and certifications. And if you actually think about it, that ruined the economy because you want to know what it did? It it allowed people just to study for the test and not study to handle real life situations. So you can go and be academically enabled to do something, but that doesn't mean that you have the necessary skills to actually perform it. And if you don't believe me, look outside. Because when this crisis hits, all the folks that had all the quote unquote training and education, they're now confused. And they're trying to look to the president or someone else to fix their problems because they can't fix it. See, you have to understand problems are hidden when things are artificially set. You can't artificially set this crisis because it's out of their control. If it was still in their control, then guess what? We'd be looking at the Dow Jones and having everything skyrocket in the Dow Jones with millions of people losing their jobs. Because why? It's a fallacy. Because you can throw in all the numbers you want because it's just on paper. Because we're printing paper. So it's imaginary economy. That's what I'm trying to say. And so you have to believe the imagination like Peter Pan, or the economy can't fly. And a lot of people are getting done believing the pixie dust. And as they take their money out, guess who puts their money in? The government. So I would actually argue that's a national security threat. That's just, in my opinion, that's a threat to national security. Because if you're not doing things to try to actually look at the problem and fix the problem, and you're just prolonging the problem, what does it say? The longer a problem goes on, the worse it's going to be when it takes root. See, we've gone through just a little bit, but we're still not going through the whole enchilada. And I believe that that's going to be coming very soon. But going back into this, listen, as we have gained in our civil rights, and I use gain very loosely, we have gone to the bank as borrowers. Because systemically, when we're dealing with systemic racism, you have to understand, us leaving the plantation with empty-handed, that's literally systemic racism. And they knew that. So I'm just going to continue to wrap you on up within this economic captivity. So you came from out of a chattel slavery, a chattel captivity. Now I'm going to bring you up in an economic captivity. Because why? I know you're going to fail because I'm going to design the system to fail. And if you get too big for this system, the system's always going to come after you. Look, whether you're saved or not, that's just reality. That's just reality. So I wanted to kind of demonstrate that with curses and economic power. And the funny thing is that when you look at Deuteronomy 28, the first 15 scriptures were all the blessings. The last 53 scriptures were all the curses. 53 verses worth of curses. Sorry for the homily, but you all get it. 53 verses full of curses. But it's interesting that the very first of the curses, as mentioned, has to deal with the money. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Look, you ain't going to make any money in the city, and you're not going to make any money in the field. How many black farmers were sold plastic seeds by the Farming Association of America? I usually see it. I'm not that far from the country around here. The FFA. And they're there to do what? They're there to protect farmers so they're getting the proper seed and grain for their cattle and their crops. And then what did they do? They messed it up. The farmers had to even do a lawsuit. And guess what? I think with the lawsuit, I don't think that even got resolved. Or they may have lost it, or they had something. It still was to undermine whatever economic power and independence we would have. And this ties into the next curse. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. That's just not farming. That's in everything. That's trying to save on up. That's trying to provide a future for your children, to sustain yourself. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Well, we don't have sheep, but we understand this is whatever we try to hold on to, however we try to sustain ourselves, as a most part, for us being a people, that's going to be driven away. And it's going to be driven away because here's the thing: no matter how much we try to do what we can in this system, we didn't even, first of all, you didn't even understand that you're in a system for almost 400 years. That's how good that deception was. That's how good that lie was. Now that we're understanding the deception, the system, and the lie, now we understand, wow, they did a number on us. Holy cow, they did a number on us. Are you telling me that they did this, they did this, they did this? And it's like, yes. Yes, that's exactly what they did. That's exactly how they did it. And see, we still don't even understand how brilliant that deception was that they carry on to this very day. That whatever we try to produce, inventions, programs, processes, intellectual thought, intellectual ideas, all that stuff, it leaves our hands and it goes right to them. And then, oh, it's a copyright, a patent, or a trademark. And we don't own that. We don't control it at all. We're just here as captors or as captives. So cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. Look, and you're just gonna have overall curses. Your car's gonna break down. You go on a vacation, man. You overlooked the bill or something happened. Yeah, you may have paid the bill, but there's always problems. There's always something because we're always dealing with something here. But when you actually understand it, the systemic problems of what we deal with and how we deal with it, then you start to realize, okay, that's what the Most High is talking about. It's not to us to get mad. It's not to us to get angry, but this is us to have an understanding. Okay, I'm getting it now. I see it now. Because when you finally start to get it and you finally start to see it, guess what you can start to do? You can start to pray about it. You can start to ask others, hey, pray with me. You can start to say, oh, we need to go on this fast to pray for this. And then that becomes the biggest national security threat. So I want to show this because on the thumbnail, it shows the city of Greenwood before and after. And so for a lot of the folks that may not be aware, if I'm speaking to an international audience, Greenwood was a black neighborhood in Tulsa, um, Oklahoma. And so Tulsa, I've been through Tulsa many times. It gets kind of flat on the western side as you're getting from out of like Oklahoma City, um, in that area. Then it starts to get kind of into a little bit hilly because you are starting to get towards your Ozark mountains slash hills, kind of on the steps of Branson and Springfield, that area. So I've spent almost 12 years in the Midwest, and I still remember Tulsa from a church youth group trip going down there for whatever. Oh, for a haunted house, and yes, this was a Christian church group. Go figure. Now that I've awoken, obviously a lot of things are just like, all right, this never really adds up. But when we look at that with that context, and if you research Tulsa, Tulsa sits strategically placed to where you're getting into the Midwest, the South, and straight up to the North. Because the next major city is actually Kansas City, and then from there you're kind of right there in the northern Midwest. So they kind of created a gateway per se for black goods and black services. And not only was that gateway so successful, but they owned more than 30% of the GDP at that time. And again, I say shout out to Lisa Cabrera because she has that information on her channel. And I would highly suggest and recommend that you go and you look at that. But see, the funny thing is that when you type in Greenwood or you try to research Greenwood, you start to see the deception that our captors have with Greenwood. Because, see, up until about 2019, Greenwood wasn't really talked about as mainstream as it is right now. But Greenwood was a pivotal discussion because it showed that reparations was definitely owed. And Greenwood is definitely an example. So I wasn't going to approach this lesson of, we need reparations. I need my $151 million. You know that they're underreporting that. So you need to definitely add another two decimal places to that left because or excuse me, to that right. You want to add it to that right because they always under report or undercount. Yeah, that's true. I don't take that away. Look, when you know the pattern, you can always assume the pattern. But what it shows from what I'm trying to elaborate with this video is that when we do things for ourselves, when we do have that economic capacity and that economic power, what happens? It gets taken away. It's just a curse being demonstrated. That's all it is. It's a curse in motion. But we don't like to say that we're cursed. We don't like to say that we're this or we're that. We have the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach on us. We have this, we have that. Yes, we do. But as a people, we don't. As a people, we don't. As a people, we hadn't. As a people, this is what our history has. And this is, if you don't want to know or respect your history, this is where we're going to be going. And heaven forbids we fall into the same trap even after our exodus. And so this last bullet point was a fear of an economic resurgence in the midst of the current crisis. That's what they're afraid of. Man, they're afraid of that. Wait a second. Are you telling me black folks are going to get on code and buy from other black folks? We're going to have a blackout. We're going to just buy from black owned businesses. We're going to create social media platforms. And when we create social media platforms, we trade within ourselves. We buy from ourselves. We become successful in and productive and efficient within ourselves. Oh man, you all know what happened the last time. Can't have that. So, do you understand? There's always going to be an effort to undermine everything we do from our captors because we're in the middle of captivity. It's great. Yes, we have awoken. And I'm not trying to diminish the fact that we've awoken because I always say, Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord, Most High, Father, Ahaya, Yahuwah, for where we're at because I would rather live knowing than living in ignorance. Nobody wants to live in ignorance, especially at this time. People would rather choose to live in ignorance because they just don't want to face the prospect of judgment and the judgments that we have setting on this nation even as I speak. But what that does, it shows that the power is being diminished. And see, the economic capacity, if you haven't realized this, a lot of folks, we've kind of returned to the basic. In terms of Israelites, we've returned to the basics because we have always been the tail in this country. So we've always had the lowly jobs. But here's the thing, because we know how to do the lowly jobs, we know how to organize ourselves too. See, we can wear the hats from the CEO down to the frontline worker. And here's the thing, when we know that that CEO actually takes care of us because they know that they are them and they are me, that's the difference. I can't tell you how many black bosses I've had that were really, when they really actually were for us, for black people, try to mentor black people, coach them, try to have them successful, try to have them moving because they knew that they're looking at themselves. Those are the ones you always work extra hard for. I know because I did that. And that's why when I was managing black folks, I would always invest just a little bit more time after the meetings, after the workday, to coach them and mentor them and to get them to where, as the drudges and the dregs of life naturally get us down, we can lift each other up. Because that's literally the definition of success when we actually take care of our own people and we bless our people. So, in conclusion, look, this wasn't a big thing touching on reparations. It wasn't a big thing touching on how much is owed to us, what type of investment funds, what type of projects, things of that nature. No, this was just kind of where we see and how we've seen things and how we need to look at that. I'm not saying you can't create a business. Shoot, I created a business in the midst of this. But I know, listen, I'm not counting on the system, I'm counting on the Most High. That's what I want people to understand. We can't count on the system, which is a good thing because the Most High actually took away the system. He systemically took away the system. They're saying right now that for any type of mortgages, any type of commercial lending, any type of business loans, they've literally just dried up. And can you blame them? Which bank in their right mind would want a loan in the midst of a crisis? I wouldn't. But again, we have to now understand, look, we're not working within the natural. We have to work now within the supernatural, because the supernatural increases far exceed the natural. See, when we pray, those storehouses that are up there in heaven, that wealth that is up there in heaven is accessible to us and to our needs, not our greeds. I'm going to shout out to my dad on that. It's for our needs, not our greeds. See, we need just enough to survive here, because here's the thing. Why would you want a Rolls Royce or a million, 6, 7, 8 room mansion in the midst of this? I wouldn't. The funny thing is, we see the stories of the super rich trying to flee to go to New Zealand and things of that nature. So if you're seeing the rich starting to flee, there's a problem looming. So this is just something we need to kind of share, put in our wheelhouse, and then just digest it. Let's just digest it. So if you like the content that I provided here at Covenant Awakenings, please like, share, and subscribe. Also visit us at covenantawakenings.com. I have a Patreon, and I do have a Cash App for if you'd like to donate. And I'm trying to actually provide some commerce from outside sources to bring on in here and to have on Covenant Awakenings, like, kente cloths, scarves, silks, different things that would be a little bit more expensive in your traditional, brick and mortar places, but something that's a little bit more affordable and reasonable within our spectrum. And I also want to say I'm promoting heavily teotwministries.ning.com and Hebrew Sphere. Hebrew Sphere is a social media platform for Hebrews and Israelites. So that's another great resource that we can develop ourselves and grow together ourselves. So I'd always like to say, many will go here and there to increase knowledge. That's all we're doing. That's the name of the game. We're just increasing knowledge. See, when you wake up, which is good. But when you wake up, you have to learn, you have to understand. That's the tenet of the Most High. That's the reason He gave us the law, statutes, and commandments, so we can have some sort of framework. And now, as we're starting to get into our food, the natural food, the spiritual food is even more. We're getting off the milk. We're now eating steak. So salama, shalom, and siemi family. Peace and blessings, Israelites, Hebrews, whatever you want to call yourself, children of the Most High. It is what it is. Love you all. Bye-bye.